So here we go. Okay, when a provider is ready and is working in their portfolio, I think everyone's familiar with this process. Um, as they're adding information to each of their standards, they will be seeing those check marks appear on the left-hand side over here. And that's what identifies to providers that they are actually ready to hit that submit button. So there's a couple of things here that I want you to take note of that are going to look different and change actually in the portfolio itself. The first thing is being for programs that are center-based but have what we call small centers. These are centers that have a licensed capacity for 18 or less children. The first change is going to come for these programs, and that change is going to occur in Standard 1 under the classroom assessment, classroom assignment. I can't show you what that screen looks like in terms of the demonstration, but what I'm going to do is go to another screen that is what they will see while they're entering information into their portfolio. So you can see here there's going to be a new question that is going to be asked, and this is going to be really helpful for providers, but then also for our assessors to know for those small centers, how are they actually combining and arranging their setting. So are they configured with one caregiving space where they have the mixed age groups combined, which would then indicate that a Vickers scale would be used for the observation, or do they in fact have more than one classroom with those different ages with separate teachers, separate schedules that would then indicate to us that an IDAS or an ECAS would be required. So this is one of the things that you're going to have to think about as you're helping providers fill out that portfolio. Those ones that are doing this initially for the first time, this question will pop up and they will simply respond to one of these two questions and then go on and add to their classrooms. For those providers who have already been in progress with their portfolio but have not yet submitted, when they get access to their portfolio to do that submission after the 8th, you're going to need to make sure that they go back to this particular item because this will no longer be checked for them. And so while it may have been checked previously, it may be a little bit confusing for them if they're getting ready to submit and they can't submit and they don't know why. So you will want to make sure that they go back. And this question will only appear on those programs where their license capacity is 18 or less. For centers with 19 or more and school age standalone portfolios, this question will not be applicable. And so therefore, that will not happen to them. So let me just go back in here. So once everything has been completed in their portfolio, you will receive, the provider will receive all of their green check marks along the side here. Another thing that I want everyone to be aware of is it's going to be really critical that you have providers go back into Standard 1, no matter what their program setting, and spend some time looking over their teacher classroom assignments. And this is simply because the information that they have added to this section of Standard 1 is going to be information that will transfer over to their pre-observation assessment information screens. And so we want to make sure that this is as current and as updated as possible, because some providers, when they start their portfolio, this could have been the first information they filled out and it could have been done 8, 9, 10, 12 months ago. So we do want to make sure that this is the most current. So just kind of keep in mind that when you're within that 30-day window and you're uploading the lesson plans and you're helping providers fill out those ratio counts, just have them go back and double check the teachers that they have assigned to each one of these classrooms to make sure that everything is as current as possible, and then that will give us the most up-to-date information as they then move into the screens for the pre-observation forms. So again, once the provider is ready to submit their portfolio, they will see all of their green check marks, and then they will have activated their submit portfolio button. So upon pressing the submit portfolio button, something new is going to be popping up. And I apologize that this system is a little bit slow today, but on the test system, it does not seem to be as fast as production. They're going to be asked an acknowledgement. So one of the things that we really want to make providers understand and be aware of is that the new process involves 2 steps. So before, when they hit that submit portfolio button, they thought they was done, and then they just waited for their email to arrive, and then they waited for their forms to arrive for them to fill out manually. So because there is no longer any manual step in this process, we do want programs to understand that there are more steps other than just hitting the submit portfolio. So this is going to be critical for them to understand. What happens though when they do hit that submit portfolio button is that no further changes can be made to their portfolio after they're ready to submit their portfolio. So that means that the portfolio is frozen just like it used to be. They can no longer go back into that portfolio and update any of the information. What will happen at this point is it will take us to the pre-observation information screens, and all of the portfolio is finished. So we give them plenty of opportunity, plenty of warning to really make sure that they're ready to submit that portfolio by asking them 2 very pointed questions. Are you ready to mark your portfolio as ready to submit? They do have to click yes to say, yes, I really am ready. And then we're going to ask them to be prepared for what's coming next, which is submitting their blackout days, their classroom observation for each classroom, which is pretty much the same information as they was filling out manually, but this is all now going to be done on the screens. We also are going to ask them if they're ready to upload a daily schedule and roster for each of their classrooms. So these are some things that they can be working on ahead of time. But we do want them to be aware before they hit that ready to submit button that all of these things do need to occur. And there is a time limit on that. So they have 10 calendar days to do all of this. They have the 10 calendar days to select their blackout days and to complete their pre-observation information for each classroom. Now, the thing to be aware of these 10 calendar days is, depending on their portfolio type, there could be some consequences if they do not submit that portfolio within the 10 required days. And so it kind of makes a difference as to whether they're in the status of being a required reassessment or if they are doing a request for reassessment. And so because there's deadline dates with those 2 types of portfolios, those deadline dates are still going to be in place. And so the deadline date is still going to be based off of when they hit this portfolio ready to submit button. I'm going to take you to another screen now to show you a flow chart of what those changes are going to be for the providers. We actually are going to have this as one of the handouts in the training tab under the QR website. So providers will be able to go to that training tab and they will be able to see lots of resources. There'll be some webinars and there'll also be some print screens, and this will be one of the handouts to help them understand what is the potential consequence if they do not submit all of that within the 10-day period. So for an initial or a reapplication, the consequences really are not too dire. If they simply do nothing and do not then submit within the 10-day window, basically their portfolio will just return to being in progress, and they'll be able to go back and continue working, updating, submitting, and then once they're ready to submit, then they will just start that process over again. Now, if they are a request for reassessment portfolio type, we know that that does have an annual verification date. So it depends on where within that 10-day window the annual verification date falls. So let's say, for example, if they submit their portfolio and they're ready, and they hit that submit button, but it's way before their verification date. So let's say their annual verification date is September the 1st, but they think, hey, I'm ready to submit all this July 1st. They get into that 10-day window and they decide, I'm not ready, or I don't have time to work on this right now, then that verification date has not passed. And then their portfolio will simply return back to being in progress. They'll be able to continue working on it up until that annual verification date. If their annual verification date, however, has passed, then that portfolio will actually change and become an automatic check-in. their rating will remain the same, and then at their next year anniversary, they'll be able to look again towards a reassessment. The same thing really happens with a required reassessment, only the consequences are a little bit harder here because we are looking at a rating expiration date rather than an annual verification date has been passed. So again, just like the same scenario, if they're within that time frame where their rating expiration date has not passed and they have not completed the 10-day window, then their portfolio will simply be returned to in progress and they'll be able to continue. If, however, their rating expiration deadline date does pass, then at that point their rating will expire and their portfolio type would become a reapplication, and then they would be able to go in and would have to just start working on that over again. So it's going to be really important that you guys kind of understand what these ramifications would be for the program so that you can help them understand that this 10-day window can have some pretty significant consequences for them if they don't actually follow through and complete this process. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Because if you do, this is a point of kind of like no return. Once I hit that portfolio is ready to submit button, then we move on to the next phase, and I actually at this point would not be able to go back. So I'll just give us a couple of minutes and see if anybody has any questions. Let's see here. Gosh, this box doesn't open up very large. Is rechecking the teacher assignments for all programs submitted after August. This looks like Cindy has a question here. Oh, lots of questions, but this box for some reason. Okay. Is checking the teacher assignment for all programs submitted after August 8th going to transfer to pre-assessment forms? Okay, so what that means, it looks like Cindy Fick had that question. Yes, basically what happens is, Cindy, is any of the information that is in that classroom assignment tab in standard 1, that is the information that will transfer over to the pre-observation information form. So that's why it's really important that we have the most up-to-date and current information there, because otherwise providers would then have to change that information once they get into their forms. So it's just one less step that then they would have to do once they get into that pre-observation form, because that information will be pre-populated. Did that answer the question, Cindy? Let's see here. Check. If it did, go ahead and type yes, and if not, then we will see what else we will need to do. Okay, the next question I have from Davini is, will the email go to the email that the program has on file for step 2? So the email, I think you might be talking about the email that comes later. There is not an email sent at this point because they have not completed the submission process. The email will actually come when they actually complete step 2 of the submission process. I think you're probably referring to this step here, the pre-observation information within the 10 days. The email here will be the same email as currently goes out once a portfolio has been received and submitted, and that would go to the same email address that we have as being the email that is used through Koala and through Quality Rated. So definitely if they have a new email, we would want to get that information. Should we recheck? Yes, Cindy, you would definitely want to make sure that you recheck that particular tab with the classroom assignments. If nothing has changed with their classroom assignments, then then you're good to go. If something has changed, then we definitely want that most up-to-date information there. Happens if the time, okay, I have another question here. What happens if the teacher information changes from the time the portfolio is submitted to the time the assessor occurs? And that unfortunately can happen at the last moment. The most that we can do with this system being an automated system is have it as current as possible at the time of submission. Obviously, if things change on the day of the observation and that classroom was randomly selected, then the assessor would still need to gather that new information on the new teacher that is in that classroom, just as we currently do. Let's see if there's any more questions here. Yeah, I wish we could kind of sometimes be mind readers and and get that the most up to date. Okay. Okay, so next question here is, so if you click no for step 2, they would receive an email reminding them or not? No. If you click no in the second step here, let me just come back onto here. So basically why these two questions are here, these are really prompting type questions. And so if either one of these is checked no, then this box will not be allowed to be checked. As you can see here, I click no on one of those and it no longer allows me to click the ready to submit. So they have to have both of these checked yes in order for this button to be activated and then to be able to move on in the process. And even if they check both of these buttons here, they could still kind of have that last minute hesitation and say, no, I'm not ready. So no emails will go out at this point. So as we get through to the second stages, which is the pre-observation information screens, that's when the email will be generated. At this point, no email is generated because they have not completed the 2 steps in the process for submission. Okay, it looks like all the questions we have thus far for this section. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh.
This box right here that's highlighted, is this time out? And do they have to say
this box?
Sure what I'm going to do, and I'm going to walk away.
Okay, so Angela has seen another question. Sorry about that. I missed one of those questions. Does this box time out? Oh, it was Angela's question. Yes, so answering Angela's question, basically all of this will time out just like the portfolio and your QR account does. And this actually may happen to us today as we're going through this demonstration. If we take too long describing something or go into another screen, when I try to hit something, it will take me back to their login screen and I'll have to log in again. So yeah, it will do that. Hopefully we can hit ready to submit and it won't do that for us now. Good. Okay, it didn't. So now that we have said that we are ready to submit our portfolio, the provider will be returned to what we call their home screen. And so this information here, there's a couple of things that are new on this screen that have changed. So I'd like to draw your attention to down the bottom here, which lists all the different application types. You can see that the portfolio status now has a new status, which is called ready to submit. So this means that the portfolio has not yet actually been submitted. It is not in pending approval status. We are now within that 10-day window to get the rest of our portfolio pre-observation information submitted in order to complete the submission process. So this is a whole new section that has been added. This allows the provider to go into those pre-observation forms to be able to add all of that information that will allow that observation to occur in a much more timely manner. The other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is this banner that you see right here. We tried to make it large and bold, and this is a countdown counter. And so what that will do is every day that a provider logs onto their quality rated account after that ready to submit button has been pushed, it will notify them of how long they have left in their 10-day window to submit their information and actually complete their portfolio submission process. It gives them the last possible day that they can submit. And so one of the things that we really want to make make sure that providers understand about this last day is no matter what that day falls on, it can be a weekday, a holiday, a weekend, that is the last day that they will be able to submit before their portfolio is either returned and then potentially they have their current rating expire, or they become an automatic check-in depending on what their status is. The reason that you see 11 days here, providers might find that a little bit confusing because we've just told them that they have 10 days to complete all this information, is we've kind of built in a little bit of time. So it is 10 days after the day you hit the ready to submit button. So technically right now I'm on the day that I did it. So my 10 days will start tomorrow. However, I can still go in today and actually start completing this information. So it's just kind of a little bit of an extra day there. So if they hit that ready to submit button at 9 o'clock in the morning, then they have the rest of that whole day, and then their 10 days moving into tomorrow. If they submitted at 11 o'clock at night, they've got 1 hour left in today, and then they've got their 10 full days to be able to submit that information. So that's just kind of important to just help them know why that says 11 days and not actually 10 days. We wanted them to have 10 full days to be able to work on this submission process. So when the providers are ready to go into their pre-observation forms, they are simply going to click on the folder here, and then this will take them into what's the landing page or their home page for their pre-observation forms. This first page really is just a lot of detailed information. We would encourage recommending providers to read this information. It explains why we need the blackout days, what counts as a blackout day, what type of information we need from the classroom details, and why it is necessary for us to have this information in order to speed up the observation process. So this is really kind of just the details that will help them understand what it is that they are going to be doing in the next couple of screens. And so what you're going to see up here on the side is just very familiar to how the portfolio looked. So we tried to keep it as similar to the process that they have gone through with their portfolio, so that they are not seeing something that looks, extremely different, and then they would have to figure out how to do this. So the two different types of information we're going to be collecting from providers ahead of time will be their blackout days and their classroom details. So providers will have the opportunity to click on blackout days, and it will take them to the detailed information about what we are asking for here for their blackout days. So again, there's some detailed information at the top of the screen here. Tells them what counts as a blackout day, gives them the directions on how they select their blackout days, and it also gives them the option, if they choose to select no blackout days, they can click on this button if they don't want any. If they do, then they just would unclick this and then scroll on down to the calendars. So the calendar interface consists of 4 calendars, which will incorporate the 90-day window in which the observation can occur. What you're going to see is the day that the portfolio was completed. So this is the day, which is today, when we hit that portfolio ready to submit button. We've got our 10 days here, which are days that cannot be selected. Anything in this light grey, weekends, the 10 days, are days that providers cannot select as a blackout day, because they are days that we will not be conducting observations on. The dark grey days that you see here, these are things like state holidays, any kind of meeting that we may already have arranged that would be days that we would not be conducting observations on. So providers would not need to use those days as the blackout days. The only days that they can select is any of these green dates, and every one of these green dates is available for them to select as their blackout day. So it really, with these 10 days here, let's just say I'm a wizard at this. I want to get this thing submitted as soon as possible, and I get everything done today, and I complete the submission process today. The first day of the observation still cannot take place until the 11th, because we are giving everybody that 10-day grace period to get everything into us. It also allows for our nutrition division to do their approval review to make sure that the portfolio can be assigned. We typically have to wait for nutrition to do a manual review to make sure that there are no reasons as to why the observation could not continue, and so that also gives them time to do that in that 10-day window. So it's super easy. Once the provider decides on which days they want to select, they simply click on the date and it will turn to red to indicate that this has been a day they have selected for their blackout day. So they will just go through here and they will pick whichever 5 days they want to choose based on what would not be a typical day for them. They can choose 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, all 5 days. It's simply up to them to select how many days that they want to choose. They can go back and change their mind if they decide, you know what, I really don't care if they come on the 21st. I will just click it again, and that gives me that day back in the bank to add somewhere else. So for this example, we'll just go ahead and pick 3 blackout days. The next section that they're going to be asked to do is to fill out anything, any additional information that is really helpful for the assessors to know when conducting those observations. So some of the things that we ask for here would be, for example, if a program is going to be closed all summer. This typically affects Head Start programs, obviously standalone school age programs. Some of them are not open during the summer. We really need to know when is the last day of school. Also, if you have a dual just pre-K classroom in your facility, it's very helpful for the assessors to know if they're following the public school system's calendar, what days they will not be in session. That way, if that classroom was randomly selected to be the class assessed on the observation, we could always go to the alternate randomly selected classroom. So this is really information that kind of goes above and beyond just picking your 5 typical blackout days that is helpful. The other thing that you can see, which is bolded there in red, is it is extremely helpful for the assessors to know what time children typically arrive in most of the classrooms. So while your operating hours may be from 6 till 6, if most of your children in the majority of your classrooms are not really ready to start their school day until 8 o'clock in the morning, then we definitely would need to know that information. So this is just a text box here that the provider can type in, and they can basically put in any information that is helpful. So whatever that is, maybe they can put some dates there. When they are ready, they're happy with their blackout days, they've given us the information that they think it will be helpful for us to know, then we simply will check this box here that says where we've completed this section, and you'll see the check mark appears up in the top here, just like it does on the portfolio. At this point, if they come back and maybe they've had a couple of days to think about this and they think, well, you know, I really kind of do think around Halloween time, maybe we've got not non-typical days, maybe I need to go back in and add those dates too. They can simply uncheck the box at the bottom here, and then they can come back and add their additional days if they choose to. And then they can move on and check their box, and now they're ready with this section. So again, it's just very simple, very easy for them to be able to identify those days and to give us the information that we need before they then move on to their classroom details. Does anybody have any questions about the blackout days before we move on? Just give anybody a couple of minutes. If no questions, I'll move on to classroom details. Okay, doesn't look like it. That's pretty self-explanatory. So classroom details, clicking on the classroom details page, again, we really wanted to give providers all of the information that they need on the screen, so that hopefully if they read, it will make sense to them what it is that they're being asked to complete, and it will give them all the steps in order for them to follow in order to do that. And now my phone's ringing, so okay, we'll hang up on them, whoever they are. So what you're going to see is this is where that information has populated from the portfolio. So this is why it was so important for us to have that detailed information, naming our classrooms, the age group. It will identify which particular instrument has been selected based off of that information in Standard 1. And then once you get into the pre-observation sheets, you'll actually see where the classroom teachers have been populated into that. So there's one thing I wanted to share with you, that on the standalone portfolio screens, you can see this is the screen for what we call a large center, which is those programs that have 19 or more children enrolled in them. At the bottom of the school age portfolio, I'm just going to come back onto this screen here. There's going to be some additional questions. And this is really just to help us determine what we need to do in terms of assigning assessors if it's a standalone school age program. Because the setup and the arrangement can look very different based on the program, we really need to know if the classroom is set up with distinct separate classrooms. So some after school standalone school age programs may have a large facility, maybe purpose built. They may have multiple classrooms, and the children attend the classroom based on their age or grade level, and they do not mix throughout the day. So they're kind of what we would think of as being self-contained. And so therefore, that depending on how many of those we have, with us observing 1/3, we may or may not need to send more assessors. Some programs operate in a large group environment where they may be housed in a cafeteria or a gym or some other large space, maybe in the elementary school. They may be grouped by ages and they may kind of rotate through the spaces, but generally they operate as one large group moving in different areas. And then if neither one of those particular setups seem to adequately explain how the setup is arranged, then the program gets the option to check box C here, and then we do ask them to tell us how is that setting arranged. So again, it just gives us that information we need ahead of time to be able to make decisions around the assessment. So coming back to our demonstration screens, what the provider is going to see here is the opportunity to enter all of their information onto the sheet, which is the information that they used to have to put on that manual sheet that was emailed to them. This is what's called the pre-observation information sheet. And you can see here all of these icons are active for them to go into each of their classrooms and add that information. The second item that providers will need to upload is for each classroom, we need to see a copy of their schedule and their roster. This icon actually will not become active until they have entered into the sheet. They don't even have to have put any information into the sheet. They just need to open this up, and then that provides the link within the system to link the schedule to the classroom. So one of the things that is going to be really important here is, in order to upload their schedule and their roster, the system will only actually allow them to upload one document. So some of the things that you may have to do ahead of time is to help providers learn, if they have classroom schedules maybe in a Word document and they may have their rosters in another document, is how to save that as one document. So they could type up and have their Word document for their schedule, and then second page they would need to have their roster. We do not need children's names, just simply the number of children with those birth dates there. And then that would be the second page of their Word document. And then they could save that as one PDF document. So you can see here, this now becomes one document. We will have some directions on how to do that. That is also going to be another one of our training resource pieces, but definitely it will help you to help providers understand how to do that. The other thing that will be really helpful for you is to have the provider have a folder on their desktop where they maybe just name it classroom schedule and rosters, and they just save all of those classrooms schedule and roster documents to that folder. It will make it much easier then to upload that information. So what I'm going to do is just kind of walk through these 4 classrooms as the provider would, so you can see the information that they would need to add to each one of those sheets. And so we'll start with the this was a infant room. So the things to be aware of here, once we get into these classroom details on the sheets, is the operating hours. So the operating hours automatically default to the program's operating hours that are defined in Koala, which is our licensing database. So for any of your classrooms, if they operate with hours that are outside of their Koala times, all they have to do is simply go in here and click on what their times are for that specific classroom. Probably won't happen that often, but for sure, if you have a Georgia pre-K classroom, we would like to see what the operational hours are for their Georgia pre-K, not for the operational hours for that whole entire classroom as defined by the actual center's operating hours. So that's just kind of a little bit of information here. Now, the next section is the staff information, and this is why it is so important for us to update that information with Standard 1, because this is where that is pre-populated. So in Standard 1, they had indicated that Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron were the teachers in this particular classroom. And so one of the things that we are then going to ask providers is if these teachers are correct, to go ahead and select what the role or the function is of these teachers in this classroom. So perhaps they're a lead teacher and an assistant teacher. Maybe one is a student intern, or maybe Hank is no longer at our facility. This is maybe Hank's been reassigned to another classroom, so we can delete Hank from this classroom assignment. But we do want to add another teacher in here because this is an infant room, so we would just simply select Add Teacher. We can then select all of the teachers that were listed in our portfolio. So everybody who you had submitted into your portfolio in Standard 1 will be listed here. If, let's just say, you hit that submit, ready to submit portfolio button 5 days ago, and now 5 days into your 10-day window, we're adding our teachers. And let's say perhaps we do have another teacher who's joined us since then and is actually now in this classroom, and maybe they're our assistant teacher. You do have the opportunity then to add that teacher into the classroom. And I'll just, yeah, I don't really know too many baseball players. Our IT folks set this up, as you can probably imagine. So, and so then hit the add button. And now you have a new teacher there in that classroom. So this is the most current information that we can possibly provide to the assessment team. The next thing that providers are going to have the opportunity to tell us is about whether or not we would need to secure a translator to join our assessment team if this classroom is selected as one of the ones that will be randomly selected for observation. So when we're asking this question here, do all teachers in this classroom primarily speak a language other than English with all the children? This is for those classrooms where nobody in the room is speaking English. So we would need to make sure that we have a translator there to allow us to continue with that observation. This is not for those kind of special. We have a French teacher maybe who comes for half an hour on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And it's not for that. This is just simply so that for most of the time during the observation, if we would need a translator, then you would select yes. If you hit select, if you select yes, then it asks you this question. to select then what is the language that we would need to secure a translator for. And you can see that there are a plethora of different languages here that you could select. You do have the option of selecting an other, and if you have an other, then you can type in what that other may be. And this one, especially for me, maybe UK English is another language there that I may need, but so you do have the option there to check other, or if we have a more typical language that's already in our list, then we can select the language that we would require. The rest of the information here is the typical standard information that was on our form and is going to be applicable to the children in this particular classroom. Again, it's going to be how many children is the maximum number. This may or may not be the license capacity based on individual programs and how many children they allow in this classroom. So we'll just, for demonstration purposes, we will just fill in these questions. On the ITAS form, you're going to have these two additional questions that asks if how many children are under the age of 18 months and how many children are under the age of 12 months. So we can say that all 8 are under both of these ages. Then you'll be selected to put in the birthday of the oldest and the youngest child, just as they do in the regular manual version. And let's say still 20. You can just kind of make up for these purposes. We'll just make up some dates here. Again, if you have any children with identified disabilities in this classroom, you would just simply check how many and then identify the particular disability. You can go back through, review, make sure everything's correct, and then are ready to hit the check box at the bottom, and then go back and simply complete this for the next one. So I'm going to go through and do all of the classrooms first and do this kind of quickly so we can move on to the upload process. I'm going to say no translation needed here. Let's see, we can say 10, got maybe 5, no. We have none under the age of 12 months. Simply for expediency, we are going to just put in dates here and check. Oh, what did we do? Something wrong. Maybe I didn't check it. There we go. Didn't check. We have a 2-year-old classroom. So again, we've got our hours, our lead teacher. We don't need any translation services. So we've got 12 2-year-olds, max, maybe there's 10 enrolled. And again, just for expediency. Yes.
When you typed in your name for add a teacher,
then
you put in D and Denise popped up.
Does yes.
It populate because you've been in the system?
Yes.
Or does it, so it's not attached to?
No, my name is not attached to this. It's just because in the system I had already been tested, and so my name was automatically there.
So these, I'm whatever this center number is, and I have a teacher that moves. When I go there, let's say I put Denise, and I have a Denise on staff.
No, it's not linked. Okay. No, the Angela was asking because my name automatically popped up. That's because I've been playing around in this test system so long that my name was just saved in the data here. I could put in somebody else's name and it shouldn't populate anybody.
I just realized that was example of staff in the background.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's linked at all to their class assignments. So maybe they've listed a teacher in a different classroom.
The only way that would happen is if you see the list of teachers here, you could put in a teacher that is already in the portfolio. So you would select one of those teachers. So the only reason that because I selected other, that allowed me to just select who I wanted to put in there. But I could have easily have selected somebody else. I could have selected Mickey Mantle as being in there and added Mickey Mantle, and then Mickey Mantle has maybe been moved from a different classroom.
So all those names are populated.
All of those names, yes, all of the names that are pre-populated are the staff that are attached to the portfolio in Standard 1. So there's no children with disabilities here. And then we will go to our last class to add the information, which is our ECHA's room. Again, we're going to say, actually, we're going to delete Mickey because we added Mickey to another class. So we are going to add Ty as our lead teacher here. We do not need a translator. Just say how many children are enrolled in this classroom, how many are our maximum. And again, we would be selecting the actual oldest and youngest, but for expediency, I'm just going to put in some dates here and check this box.
Another question, Denise. One of the follow-up items from Belinda relative to the portfolio has been maybe I'm the lead teacher. I have been identified as the lead teacher in 2 different classrooms.
Okay.
Would this system catch that?
This system, so if in the portfolio you have been identified as the lead teacher in 2 classrooms, it will pull that information over into the pre-observation forms. So it will show you as being the lead teacher in both of those classrooms. So this will then give you the opportunity to make that change and delete one of them out and to put the correct person in as being the lead teacher. So as I had mentioned earlier, as soon as you actually open up one of these pre-observation sheets, this is when it activates to allow you to upload the schedule and rosters. As you notice, I did not upload the schedule or roster at the time I was doing the information sheets. And this is just one of the things that we found in testing. It's a little bit more time consuming to come out and then go in and then upload and then go in and then come out and then upload. It actually seemed to go more quickly if we did all of the information in our sheets and then simply came and uploaded. So we're looking for an infant, toddler, 2 and a 3-year-old schedule. So what that will do when you click on that upload button, it's very similar to how they upload information into their portfolio. They'll be brought the upload document box and they can hit browse, and then they're going to look for somewhere on their on their desktop as to where they keep that. So I had previously gone ahead onto my desktop and I had added a folder, as I mentioned earlier, called Classroom Schedule and Rosters, and then simply open this up, find the schedule and roster that matches each classroom, simply hit upload. They can put a description here if they choose. They don't have to. That is completely optional. And then we'll be hitting upload, and then they can just come into the next one and do the same thing. And this way it actually makes it go much more quickly because you can see I've still got all my schedules here open. And so it can just be very quick and easy if they have created this folder ahead of time for them to then be able to upload their schedules. Last one. Please hit upload. And so then what the provider is going to see at this point is we're really pretty much at the end of what they need to do. One thing I do want to share with you, because we're not going to go through all the different portfolio types, is when we was on the, let me open up one of these observation sheets. So if you remember the difference between the observation sheets from the family childcare provider, we actually ask you for the number of children by age group. So in this section here, the student information, what the family childcare provider will actually see will be that additional box where they get to select the age groups of the children and how many they have enrolled by age groups. So for the family providers, that's really the only difference here, is adding that additional information there. So we're going to come back. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions about either the pre-observation information sheet or the uploading the schedules? Looks like we have some questions here. Ooh, let me go back. Okay. They give us such a tiny little box there. How many days in advance can the blackout dates be chosen? So the blackout days you have during that whole 10 calendar day window, you can select your 5 blackout days during that 10-day window. Once that 10-day window has closed, then either they would have had to have completed the submission process, or they will have had their portfolio returned to them, and then that's where that flow chart comes into play. So it's not so much as in advance, it's just all of this information has to be completed within that 10-day window.
Until they pick their 5 blackout dates, they have not submitted.
Yeah. So until they have picked their 5 blackout days and until they have filled out all of this classroom pre-observation information, their portfolio is not submitted, because remember that status was pending. It was ready to submit. It has not been submitted. It's a 2-step process. You have to do all of these steps in order for it to actually be submitted. Next question. If they add a teacher under other because they came after the portfolio was submitted. So remember, the portfolio technically has not yet been submitted. This is something that it's kind of wrapping your head around and really having a paradigm shift. The portfolio is ready to submit. It has not been submitted at this point. Nothing has been submitted until they have completed this whole process. So the portfolio is just in ready to submit status. But they cannot go back into the portfolio to make any changes.
So if this teacher came after they've started this, she's not going to.
Yes. So the question is, if they add a teacher under the other because they came after the portfolio was submitted, will they be included in bonus for level 3, or will they still need to be in Georgia PDS within portfolio when submitted? Yes. So that is correct, because when you hit that ready to submit button, the portfolio is frozen. So everything in terms of scoring remains the same for the portfolio. Everything in terms of who's eligible for what particular bonuses remains tied to what is in the portfolio. This information that they're giving us now is the exact same information that we requested in the 10-day window after the assignment had been made to the assessor teams, but we're getting it ahead of time now so that we can get observations conducted much more quickly and get out there with the information that we need. So that policy has not changed in terms of they still have to be in the portfolio at time for ready to submit. Okay, this is a good question. So if there is a staff member that only speak the second language to all of the children daily, you will complete that information. So this depends on how many staff members you have in the classroom. If you have 2 staff members and one speaks English and the other, for example, speaks Spanish to the children all day, we will not need a translator because we will be using the language samples heard from the English-speaking teacher. If, however, both of the teachers only speak a language other than English, then we would need to know what that language is so that we can secure a translator. Hopefully that answers that question. Yes, so this question says, so you can hit save within a classroom observation form and come back to it. So yes, you actually could. You can come in and out of these things up until you get ready to submit, to actually submit everything. So I've actually saved these. I can come back in here and change my mind on any of this information that I've given you. I can uncheck the box. I can save this information here, and I can come back tomorrow and decide I need to make changes to it. So saving will just save the information. Clicking the checkbox here says that all of the information is complete and ready. And what that does then is you can see over on this side of the screen is that it gives us this check mark here. These check marks will not occur until you have checked the box at the bottom of the screen on the pre-observation sheet, and until you have checked the box and uploaded your schedule and your roster. Then it will let us know that everything is ready to actually be submitted at this point. So the system does not catch any errors like the birth date being wrong for what you entered on the screen. No, because we do not know the birth dates of the children in the classroom. So there's no way for us to verify that the information that they have given us is correct or not. We hope that it does. What it will do, though, is it will give you an error message if your birth dates are incorrect in terms of your youngest and oldest. So if you have the birth date of a child that is younger in the oldest section, then it won't let you submit. So let me see if I can explain that a little bit better. So I'm going to uncheck here and say that I need to go back in here. So, for example, we're saying here in this classroom that our oldest child was born on July the 1st, and we're saying that our youngest child was born July 31st, which is correct and would be accurate. If I go back and say that our youngest child was born before the oldest child, and I try to check, I get an error message here that tells me that the birth dates are not valid because you can't have them the child being younger being listed in the older one. So it does check for that, but obviously we cannot check to know their birth dates because we do not know. It's not linked to their rosters in terms of the information that they send us on their roster. And it's not, yeah, it's not linked to the name of the 2-year-old class either with anything with those rosters. So that that information we would need to just kind of rely on the provider to be self-checking and editing that. Let's see. So to clarify, the portfolio will not be submitted until after the program submits QR observation forms. However, program will not be able to make changes in their portfolio. That is correct. So in essence, new staff members added after the program is in ready to submit status won't be added to the bonus. That is correct. So after the ready to submit button has been checked, your portfolio is frozen. No more changes can be added there. The information that we're now collecting is simply to make the observation process be much more expedient and as current as it can possibly be for us to get out there and conduct that observation quickly. It does not in any way affect that information that you put into your portfolio. That is correct. I think that was the last question. Did we miss one?
Yeah.
Oh, that one. Hang on. Maybe not the last question. Oh, nope. It didn't catch that when you just did it. I'm not sure what Heather just said. It didn't catch that when you just did it. So it didn't let Heather. It didn't let me. It wouldn't have let me submitted it with that. I had to scroll up to the top, and it gave me the error message. So maybe she typed that before I scrolled up to the top. This particular webinar will not be available for providers. We actually are developing webinars for each portfolio type that will be available to the providers under the training tab. This webinar, or this part of the webinar, is being recorded, and we will put this into the TA tab so that all of the TA staff will be able to go back in and review this, because this is going to have some of the additional tips that as TAs you would want to work on. Okay, got that from Heather. This is the really hard thing doing these things remotely. It's like in the room, it's so much easier to explain how this all works. Okay, so if there's, I think we have no more questions there, so we're going to go on and, yes, Angela has a question. Let me see.
Select that a child has a disability, do you have to select the category?
Yes. So if it, just like Angela had a question about on the sheet where we ask if any children have identified disabilities, and for us to then select the type of disability. So that is just exactly the same as it is on the previous manual forms, that we would select the type of disability or the category of disability, and of course you have other there that you can select. So again, once everything is checked and we're ready to go, then you will come back to this main landing page. Basically here, the provider is saying that I'm ready now to complete this submission process. I can see that I need a translator for my infant room. I have completed everything for my infant room. I do not need any other translators, and I have completed everything that is required for the other 3 classrooms, and I am ready to move on to the next step, which is actually submitting my portfolio and my pre-observation information. So as soon as you check this box down here, what you're going to see is just like in the portfolio, whereby you have green check marks here. That is basically your affirmation that you are ready to move on to the next step. Once you see these 2 green check marks, this box up here will be activated. This is what actually allows you to complete the submission process. So basically you're saying everything's good here. I do not need to make any changes to my blackout days. I do not need to make any changes to my classroom details. I'm within my 10-day window still, and I'm now ready to hit that submit button. So we are going to hit the submit button. And even at this point, programs are still given the option to back out. So even if they really are really not ready, they still have the option here to hit cancel and go back in and make any of those changes to their pre-observation forms. Again, no changes can be made to the portfolio, but they could still make changes to their pre-observation information at this point if they choose to hit select. If they choose to hit cancel. We'd like them to read all of their questions. They've done their blackout dates. They've got all of their information for their classrooms. They've uploaded their schedules and rosters. They understand that once they hit submit here, this is the actual submission. This is what is going to send it to Quality Rated to make that assignment. So up until this point, nothing has been submitted to Quality Rated. We have not been notified that they're in that ready to submit process. This is all still on the provider's end. Once they hit this submit button here, nothing will then be returned. No updates can be made. This will go straight to our assignment team to get that observation made, and they will then come out on their next available date that they can put this on their calendar. So if they're really ready to hit that submit button, then they just simply hit submit pre-observation and portfolio. At that point, the portfolio has now become pending approval. So just like it does now, they will become pending approval. The provider will receive an email notifying them that their portfolio has been submitted and has been received. And the next step from quality rated that they will hear will be once the portfolio has been accepted and assigned to an assessment team, they will be notified of their 90-day window with the confirmation email. This is where things change a little bit, though. As you know, currently when they get that 90-day confirmation email, it gives them the deadline date for the observation, and that's when all of that manual process takes place. Because all of this now has been done ahead of time, there is no manual process, and the observation will be assigned immediately. So the assessors still work within a 90-day window, because once they get the assignment, they have to be able to look at the information that the provider has given them with their blackout days. They have to be able to look on their own calendars and see when they have that next availability to conduct the observation, working with their support assessors. And then they go on and they actually schedule the observation. Within the system at our end, as soon as the assessor team has scheduled that observation, which will be a very quick turnaround, the provider will then get another email that will identify the 30-day window in which the observation will occur. So the first email they get will be the 90 days, just letting them know that their assessment team has been assigned. They'll get the what to expect during the observation handout attached to that email. And then the email will also notify them to be looking within the next couple of days for a second email, which will notify them of the 30-day window in which that will occur. So for the provider, this is really the end of that process, because they're now just going to be waiting for their emails to come. So let's see if we have any questions here. Okay. So we had a suggestion here, which is not really a question, so suggestions are good. The suggestion was that we add an option for the providers to actually check off each one of those bullets to ensure that they have read and understood each item. So, I mean, that would definitely be an option to think about as we enhance the system. That would not be something that would be able to go into this current production that releases next week, because that would involve coding changes. But I certainly think that's something we could take into consideration to really just kind of make sure that they really understand what this is that they're agreeing to. And when will the webinar be available for viewing? So the webinar, hopefully I'll be able to get this up by the end of today. Well, actually, no, it probably won't be available at the end of today, because I have to actually send it to the IT team. I have to send them the link. Hopefully within the next couple of days, this webinar will actually be available in the TA tab. We are hoping to have all of the provider webinars uploaded under the training excuse me, under the training tab at the bottom of the QR website on the 4th. So everything should be there before we go back live on the 8th. But as far as the this one that we've just done today for the TAs, hopefully that should be within a day or two. I'm just not sure how long it takes for IT to put that link in there. What I can do is have Catherine or Angela email you guys, or email you the directors once the link is available there in the TA tab, and then you'll be able to access that information. Next question is, when they go into pending status, they will receive an email that it has been received. Did you say they will get another email stating their 90-day window, or will they not get another email until the assessor contacts them with the 30-day window? Okay, so they're actually going to get a total of 3 emails. The first email they will receive will be the exact same email that they currently receive when they go into pending status, pending approval. That's the very, very short email that just says, thank you. It's just an acknowledgement that the portfolio has been submitted and has been received. So it's just a very it's like a one sentence email. That has not changed. The second email that they receive will be when the supervisors actually assign the assessor team, and that is the same email, well, very similar to the email that they currently receive, which is their 90-day window email. So as soon as the supervisor, they'll be notified that there is a portfolio in pending approval status. They then will go in, they will determine which assessor team to assign that to. As soon as they make that assignment, that generates that 90-day window automatic email to the provider, lets them know who their assessor team is, lets them get that what to expect during the observation handout, and it will also notify them to be looking for another email. So the third email that they get will come very shortly after the second email, because that will be once the assessor team has received their assignment. They will go in, they will be able to schedule this observation immediately because they have all the information they need to conduct the observation. And so the moment that they put in the date that they have scheduled it into the system, that will generate the 30-day email to the provider to let them know the 30-day window in which the observation will occur. So the observation could occur, like we just tell you, it could be the day after you hit submit. It could be the 80th day after you hit submit, depending on what the workload is looking like for the assessor who has been assigned this particular observation. But the good thing for the provider will be, instead of now waiting for a whole 90 days, they are going to know up front when that 30 days will occur. So that really lets them be able to better plan, to know that they're really looking at a 30-day window rather than a 90-day window. Let's see. For required reassessments, will they need to complete this process 10 days before the required submission? So no. There's a little bit of there's a longer time frame with the required reassessment. So because the required reassessment, this is a really good question, and I'm glad you brought it up because I would have forgot to tell you this. The required reassessment, the 90-day window, is not actually going to start as early as the 11th day after their 10-day window. They actually are given another month, because with the required reassessment, we have to score the portfolio first to determine whether or not the assessment can even take place. But we're still going to ask them when that information will be for their observation. So the calendar will look a little bit different. Oh, that's a request for reassessment. Sorry. This is required. Oh, sorry, I misread the question. So, okay, well, so let me finish what I was saying, because that question may not have been asked then. So for the required reassessment, there will be an additional month that will allow us to score that portfolio before the 90-day window will occur. So the calendar will look a little bit different in terms of when they'll start to see those green dates on the calendar. This question actually was about required reassessments. Will they need to complete this process 10 days before the required submission? No, they would not. Did I? Oh, gosh. Request for reassessments. Yes. Okay. Okay. This is getting tongue-tied. Okay. The request, I'm looking at the screen. I'm not looking at the screen. The request for reassessment is when they get an additional month before their 90-day window starts on the calendar. And that is to allow the portfolio team time to review the portfolio to determine whether or not the observation can occur. So that's for the request for reassessment. Excuse me. We've got to come up with better names for these things. The required reassessment, which is what the question was about, is whether they would need to complete this process 10 days before the required submission. No. So the required reassessment, that's when you have that expiration date for your portfolio. As long as you go all the way back to that beginning where you hit that ready to submit portfolio, that is when everything gets frozen. So as long as you hit that ready to submit portfolio on or before your expiration date, you will still be okay. You will not be expired, and then you will have that 10 days in order to submit the rest of the information. However, if you leave it that late and you do not get that information submitted within the 10 days, then you would expire. So that's where we had that flow chart to explain that process. So again, for the required reassessment, you have up until your expiration date to submit that ready to submit portfolio. That is when your portfolio freezes, and then you're given your 10 days. If within that 10-day period you you do not submit the rest of the information and that 10 days passes, then you would be following this loop down here, which means your rating would have expired, because your rating would have expired back 10 days previously when you actually hit that ready to submit button. So it's going to be really crucial that providers understand that their submission process hasn't completed until this 10 days has passed. So it's kind of like you get a little free 10-day window here. If you choose to wait until the very last moment, you actually are given an extra 10 days to get everything in. But if you don't get everything in within that 10 days, then you will have expired. So that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind as you're working with providers around that. Sorry for the mass confusion there. Oh, okay. So does anybody have any more questions before we move on to some of the some of the program manual updates? Because I'm going to stop the recording at this point so that we can just have the information that we need on the TA tab that will just be the demonstration part, and then I will just share the rest of the information about the program manual. Any more questions? Once you get a chance to go in and use the system, I think you'll find it's very intuitive. It really, as long as providers and TAs read all of the directions, it really is very self-explanatory. It's not anything different than what programs were already required to do, except now it's coming before instead of after the fact. And so that really will allow our assessors to really speed up the process of observations, get out there much more quickly. They have all the information they need to know to be able to get these on their calendars and to get out into our programs instead of having such a long time between the two. So I'm going to stop the recording and switch gears